Just don't let them get started on Blippi. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Oconee County Planning Commission for Monday, November the 23rd, 2020.
Hold on, Danielle.
You all continue on. If we start doing stuff, you'll just.
Okay,
keep
no,
doing
we will
that.
do that. I'm assuming we do not need any kind of invocation or pledge?
No.
We're good?
Special meeting.
All right. It's a special meeting, so there's no one signed up for public comment that I know of. And with that, Mr. Eleazar,
That's correct.
may I turn it over to him, Mr. Chapman?
Yeah.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and appreciate you adjusting your schedules to accommodate mine. It just seems that my meetings, the ones we have with our board and committees, are at the exact same time that you all have yours. So again, I do appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you. My name is Chris Eleazar. I'm the Executive Director at the Oconee Joint and Regional Sewer Authority. I've been there about 3.5 years in this role, and I'm still trying to figure things out. What I'm going to do tonight is I've got a little bit of a presentation that I put together, and I put this together for our member cities earlier in the year. So I just dusted it off just a little bit, took out some slides that weren't relevant, and left in some things here. First of all, a little bit about the history of the place. If you don't know what we are, why we exist, how we came about, I'll let you know about that. Then I'll go into some of the issues and challenges that we're seeing, and not just challenges, but some of the observations as well. And then also where we plan on going moving forward. There'll be a talk about Sewer South. I know there's interest in that as well. I'll move through this fairly quickly, and I will turn it over and let you run your meeting and ask me whatever questions that you may have. Does that work for everyone? So I will try to be respectful of your time. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. Here's the history lesson. So it lines up differently on here than it did on my screen. Okay, so back in 1971 was really the time at that time, the Oconee County Sewer Commission, which was a commission operated for and by Oconee County. Go through the timeline, we began working with what we now call our member cities, which are Walhalla, Westminster, and Seneca, back in the late 70s. And the treatment plant, the one treatment plant that we had at the time that we still have and operate to this day, went online and began receiving wastewater flow from across the county, primarily from those cities, back on February 4th of 1980. There has been one upgrade to the treatment plant that went into effect back in 1996 to basically increase the capacity by about 50% to what it still is now, which is 7.8 million gallons a day. We typically see on an average day between 2.7 and 3.1 million gallons a day during dry weather. That flow may double or even triple during rainfall events. 2004 to 2007, that highlight that up there, and I placed it in red. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Cornelius versus Oconee County lawsuit that took place in regards to sewer operations. So just as a summary of what happened, there was a referendum that took place in 1976 with the voters in Oconee County that essentially is what helped to create us. But at that time, the gist of it was that tax revenue could not subsidize or be used for operating the sewer system. Well, Cornelius brought about this suit, and the ruling in this suit said that the county did lack the authority to build and operate what it says there, a water system, but it was a wastewater system. But that the county could contract out operations of the system. So that plus several other factors led to us basically splitting off from Oconee County and forming our own government, which is now the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. There was special legislation that was created for that, and we are not a city, we're not a county, we're not even a special purpose district if you're like Pioneer Rural Water is. We are what is called a joint authority water and sewer system. So our member cities that oversee us and make up our board, there are 3 that represent the city of Seneca. Then they can appoint 1 at-large member that cannot work for the city nor live inside the city limits. There's 2 for Walhalla, 2 for Westminster, and 1 that those 2 cities appoint jointly that can work for neither of the 2 cities nor live within those cities. So there's a total of 9 members. Is it working?
That's what I mean, turning in.
Okay. We have about 18 employees. There's a little asterisk next to that because we're losing a key component to our system. Right now, we're losing our operations director. He's retiring after who knows how many years operating wastewater treatment plants. That will be effective December 11th, and the person we're losing is over all of operations, the plant as well as all the pipelines and infrastructure outside of the facility. We treat wastewater for approximately 20,000 people per day at one treatment plant. And as I mentioned earlier, capacity is about 7.8 million gallons a day. We can store up to 9 million gallons a day on site as well as off-site, a combination of that. And we have about 60 miles of gravity sewer, and I believe it's 15 pump stations currently that serve primarily the 3 large cities plus West Union, whose flow really goes through the city of Walhalla. So 3 cities, 1 town. We currently also contract out operations for Oconee County. Down at the Golden Corner Commerce Park, there's 1 pump station that is online right now. There is no customers directly tied to that as of yet, but that is going to be a critical component in the very near future because it's going to be what is sending the flow from the I-85 Fairplay sewer up to the treatment plant that we have located just outside of the city of Seneca behind the high school on Return Church Road. And soon, the last bullet point also is we will be making our first trip into the retail sewer venture within the next couple of years once the Fairplay sewer goes online. So currently we operate as a wholesale sewer system. The retail providers are the cities, Walhalla, Westminster, Seneca. We will be the retail provider when it moves down to the interstate. I took this screen grab, that's why I strolled in just a few minutes late. This is from 4:25 this afternoon. I was watching this live stream of a public hearing in Greenville County that has to do with sewer. And sewer is not just a big deal in Oconee County or in the cities within the county. It's a complete upstate issue. So this meeting here was about the consolidation of sewer efforts in Greenville County. They are made up of 13 sub-districts, essentially what we call our cities here, member cities. But many of their sub-districts are they have police and fire protection, some of them do, along with sewer service. So there's been a push up there to try to consolidate those and have 1 retail sewer provider and 1 wholesale treatment system like we would be, and that's Renewable Water Resources. So I tuned in just to see the direction of how things are going up there with that public meeting, and just to gauge how the people were speaking about it, because I use that as somewhat of a barometer to find out how things may be coming down here in the next next distant or not too distant future. Okay, growth, using our 2019 numbers, we saw an increase of flow requests that we have permitted that went up by about 253% over 2018. So it was just an unbelievable number. As you can see there, a majority of that was going to be for we had an increase of 3 industrial projects that were added to the system in that year that did not take place the year before. But the residential projects, we've had a lot of homes that we've seen come in here, whether they be individual homes or part of a community in a subdivision that has been designed and built out to some extent, and homes being built in there now, or whether it would be a new construction. And this does not take into account any of the multifamily homes that we've permitted so far this year. The development that we're seeing in our service area, and when I say the service area that we see is around those cities currently, is taking place in 4 primary locations. There's really a 5th one that we see a lot of interest in as well, and I'll touch on that one in just a minute. So the most frequent request for new sewer is one where it is being sewered right now, and that's Sheep Farm Road, Bounty Land area, and up to Highway 28. We've seen a fair number of requests up there. There's some sewer service there, not a lot. The city of Seneca is putting in a line to serve the intersection of Bounty Land and Sheep Farm Road. I drove past it on the way up here. I don't know what the timeline is for that going into service. The next unsewered area that we have a lot of requests about or calls about is the Richland area along Highway 123. Third would be Fairplay, and really I would say that Fairplay and the next one that I click, Highway 123, is the 2 that we have received the most requests for sewer capacity and interest on. And when I say interest, it's just determining if there's lines in the area that would be able to serve either a home or a commercial development. Fairplay and the 123 corridor between Clemson and Seneca, most of those are for commercial interest. And then the 5th one that we have seen going on is an area where we have plenty of sewer capacity and we have plenty of infrastructure, and that is in the downtown Seneca area, and that also extends northward to the bypass. But looking at that, 4 of the 5 areas are places where we either lack capacity, where we can't accept much more flow, the pipes are almost full, or areas where we have no pipes at all. There's nothing to connect. The only way for people to have sewer would be to install a septic tank or to pay to have a line run to them to serve. Sewer South. You familiar much with the Sewer South project? So, as I mentioned earlier, back, I believe it was in the late 2000s, the Golden Corner Commerce Park, the concept of that started to become a reality, and it was decided at one time to look at installing a wastewater treatment plant, whether it be down there at the Sanctuary Point area or the Welcome Center, but there was talk about having a treatment plant somewhere down in that portion of the county. That never happened. Several years go by, and it was decided, I believe, when it may have been Richard Blackwell that was here that began that project, or maybe even before him, but it was finally decided to go ahead and install a pump station instead of a treatment plant that would be able to pump wastewater from the Golden Corner Commerce Park up to our treatment plant. The line's approximately 10 miles long. So that was built, put into service with the hopes that having sewer there would help attract an industry to Golden Corner Commerce Park. Well, that never happened, or it hadn't happened up until this point, but what that ended up being was it turned into a hub that we could use to extend lines from there down to the interstate. This entire project began with Oconee County, and we stepped in when there became grant funds available, and it was determined that we were the only ones that were gonna be eligible to apply for the grant. So our board, they elected to participate, negotiated, worked through everything with Oconee County, and it was decided we were gonna go ahead and pursue the grant. The design for the system was in place for the most part, and we currently, we received the grant. If I didn't state that, it's gonna be close to a $5.5 million project that's going to run sewer into the village, the heart of the village of Fairplay, to exit 2 and over to the Welcome Center. It's basically gonna be a trunk sewer that's gonna need, if you think about that as a primary artery, it's gonna need branches to come off of that to serve more of the parcels. But it's a great start. It gets definite known wastewater into the pipes, which we need for that pump station to operate, because we're taking the Welcome Center, they have a treatment plant down there, it's going offline. So exits 1 and 2 will have sewer access to them, and we're in talks currently with trying to figure out some way to get it to exit 4, because that's another area where we've had a tremendous amount of requests, but that, when all of this went into effect, most of the focus and effort was trying to get it to exits 1 and 2. I'm assuming that that's the area where they had the most requests. Now it seems exit 4 is the area where we personally get a lot of phone calls on probably a weekly to every other week basis about potential developments along or around exit 4. The next few slides just to zoom in to those areas a little closer. That shows the general route of the pipeline, and most of that is pressurized sewer. So there's not going to be a way for anyone to connect to that. It's coming from a pump station and pumping it under the lake, up the hill to the high point there on the north side or western side of exit 2, at which time it's going to be pumped again up to the heart of Fairplay and flow by gravity down to the pump station at Golden Corner. This just shows several of the routes, and if you want to come back to any of these, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to come back and go into more detail or answer any questions you have about it. I discussed capacity. Besides areas where we have no sewer available, the biggest issue that we're having is capacity related. So the primary cause of us having a lack of capacity is what is called, in the sewer field, is called I&I. But what that stands for is inflow and infiltration. So inflow is direct rainwater that's getting into the sewer system through a storm drain or downspout at somebody's house being piped into the sewer system or whatever the case may be. Infiltration is groundwater that's infiltrating the sewer line through breaks in the pipes, is the typical way that happens. So what this graph shows you here is we get a little bit of rain, which is indicated by the blue nearly vertical lines, and the flow, which is represented by the green lines, it peaks. Well, what happens when that occurs is we begin seeing overflows or near overflows, and when that happens, it gets on DHEC's radar, and DHEC isn't very happy with us right now. So we have been sent to DHEC's enforcement section to try to resolve some of the issues that we've had with overflows. Most all of our overflows that we've had in my time there have been due to inflow, the rainwater getting into the system, and the majority of that is taking place inside the city systems themselves, which are in areas that are beyond our ability to control. So we're working with the cities, trying to encourage them and working with them in any way possible to try to reduce that source of inflow. So we provided grant matches to them in the past, and I think all 3 of them in the last 3 years have undertaken fairly significant projects. I think Walhalla, if they haven't started one of theirs, they're starting theirs very soon. They just received a $500,000 grant within the last 6 months, 8 months, I believe, to begin a inflow reduction project over on Cane Creek. And finally, I encourage you to schedule a tour. I don't know that you want to do it right now if you have to walk around wearing a mask, which is going to trap in some of that odor you might smell at the treatment plant. But once we can kind of get through this pandemic and you want to come out and walk through the facility, we are happy to show it off. It's an amazing thing if you've never seen a TV show or come out and seen it in person, how you can take water that looks, like coffee is basically what it looks like when it comes in at the top of the plant, and make it look almost good enough to drink. It actually makes it look good enough to drink, but it just doesn't meet drinking water standards. But what I'll do also is I'll leave cards with you all if you have questions or would like to set up a time to come down there. We'll be happy to meet with you. If you want to meet out in the field to take a look at something out there as well, I'm here to serve you all. So that being said, there's a pretty picture of a sunset that took place, or not a sunset, a rainbow that took place at sunrise one morning when I showed up to work. And what you can't tell, but I'm going to try to point that out, you can see the entire rainbow here. And you can't make it out because of the projection, but that rainbow actually ends at one of the tanks on site at our treatment plant. So if any of you would like to go diving for the gold out there,
I don't think so.
I will encourage you to do so. I will stand by and watch and support you. So that being said, that's the end of my little PowerPoint presentation. And the rest of my time here will be basically just Q&A, with me being the answer portion of this. So I'll open it up. Anything you want to ask, I'll be happy to try to get you an answer.
I took a couple of notes on my hand because I didn't have any paper. Sorry, I was counting on an agenda to be able to write notes, and sorry. That's okay, no problem. Okay, do you have the budget to replace the person who's retiring?
We do, yeah, we do. Mr. Hunt, his name's Steve Hunt, and Steve, I don't know that we're gonna be able to overlap entirely, where we can bring somebody new on board and have them there in time for him or her to train under Steve. But Steve will be willing to come back on a contract basis because he's also our operator of record for DHEC. So we will need him to continue until we have a replacement operator of record. So we should be fine, with that in the budget.
So who's ultimately responsible for those overflows and spillages?
It depends on where they're located. So I'm going to go back to that map earlier. Okay. All right, so on here, the orange lines represent the city of Walhalla's lines. The blue is Westminster, the pink or red is Seneca's, and ours don't show up very well on here, but ours are a green line. I don't even know if they're on there at all, actually. But we have a green line, and our treatment plant is located right around down here. So if the spill takes place on a city line, the city's responsible for it. If it takes place on one of ours, is us. But what can happen is, like I mentioned about some overflows that we have no ability to control. So one of the spots we have is up here at Duck Pond Reservoir. We have a pump station this on Duck Pond Road and receives flow from about, I'd guess it's the southwestern quadrant of Westminster. I think that's a pretty accurate portrayal of the system. But when the pond rises, when we have heavy rainfall, or when there's substantial rainfall inside the city of Walhalla, that rainfall will come in through the lines, and it'll come in the system up here but it'll surface down near the pond. So it's water that's outside of our system that eventually makes its way down through and influences us and forces that overflow on us. And this isn't anything, no groundbreaking, I'm not making any news here. The city of Walhalla is aware of this. We've collected data and I've sent them graphs and they're aware of it. They're looking, I think they've identified several sources of direct connections to storm drains since I sent them, sent them a notice back in, I think it was January or February. But whoever owns the pipe where it happens is who's responsible for the overflow.
So basically, if I understand correctly, there's one treatment center for Oconee County, right?
That's correct.
And where, somewhere in there, there's enough green pipe to connect the sea green, the mustard, and the pink, all to that single somehow. That's okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly.
That is correct. And
Okay.
when I mentioned that we had that 60 miles of pipe, that's what I'm
That's basically
referring
it.
to.
That's the
So what we have is, and when I describe us as a wholesale provider, what we have is what's called a interceptor or a trunk sewer system. And that trunk sewer is just like a trunk of the tree. You've got the branches up at the top of it. It brings it down that trunk to us. And that's what we own and operate. It's that larger diameter sewer that runs north to south from Walhalla and west to east from Westminster. And then we've got two separate connections with the city of Seneca. One is from around the hospital westward that takes flow over to the Richland Creek area, and then everything else, for the most part, will travel either south or east or west from the lake to the treatment plant that way. And the treatment plant, it's about half a mile below the path of the tornado, so we didn't have much in the way of damage. But when the tornado happened, we can kind of look through the woods now that it's fall and be able to see Cross Creek. So that's where we're located, on Conneross Creek.
Yeah, I know where the main plan is. That's why I was asking, was it that, in fact, what holds it? I think.
Go ahead.
We're trying to deal with obtainable housing, and you had residential. How does, say, a developer come in here and say, okay, I'm going to start building some obtainable houses? In other words, not 400, 500,000. How does he get on the list to find where the sewer access is that he can get permitted for? Or get on the list so that he can tap into the sewer system?
Yes, sir. The way the process works currently is and this is a weekly type of call. I had one not long before I came in here that was for a potential project that was on the area between Clemson and Seneca on 123. And what they do, the way the process works, is they identify the land and they approach either the city that would be the retail provider, or they'll contact us to find out if we have the capacity to treat it, or where the lines are, how far away they'd have to run a line to be able to connect to us. At that time, if it's, say, for a small subdivision or a townhouse, any project that you may have,
Multifamily, anything?
anything, yes, sir. They would be required to do what's called the downstream assessment to make sure that we have capacity in the pipelines, because we do have some areas, but that area being one of them, being the primary one, where the pipes are running pretty full, especially during wet weather. They're running full. So all of those have to come to us currently, and we have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. For the most part, though, in the rest of the system, we still go through the same process of confirming that we have capacity, but I don't know of anywhere that we would necessarily say you cannot build at that location. At one time, if you were to ask me a year ago, there was a question about the OITP, that industrial park on Highway 11. And we thought at that time that we did not have capacity due to a lot of the inflow and infiltration we were having from Walhalla. Well, what we did is we went and gathered some more information. Our consultants did the bulk of the work, who is Goodwin Mills and Kaywood Engineering, and they've got what is called a hydraulic model. And what this does is they're able to take and plug in numbers, plug in flow, and determine how that affects our system downstream, and lets us know if we're gonna have overflows or the potential of overflows during a dry weather 2-year and a 5-year rain event. Well, we've come to find out over the last few months that the areas where we thought we had some serious concern on the western side of the system, we may not have as much concern as we once thought we did.
Does the developer have to pay for all this analysis and this work?
They do. It's, for us, it's currently $625 per assessment, and we basically take that, we pay it, we invoice the developer for that.
I've got a question.
Yes.
There's a pink line running up Highway 130 there all the way to the Duke plant. I was thinking that was a direct flow line from Duke that's not tappable or this or that, but coming almost back down halfway through, there's a big thicker pink spot. Is that actually just a pump station, or is that actually some area that has sewer to it?
That's Newry. So
Oh, that is the
Newry,
Newry area.
back,
Okay.
they had sewer years ago. They had their own little treatment plant until I believe it was around the mid-2000s. And they installed the new collection system, and the city of Seneca's taken that as part of their system. But you are correct, that line that goes up Highway 130 is a pressure sewer line from the couple of pump stations that serve Oconee Nuclear. And
Okay.
it flows down into Newry, where it's then pumped again up back into the city.
Also in that pink section, there's scattered out just little pimples and splotches that don't seem to be connected at all. Does that mean that there are pressure lines that there, for example, and there's a couple of others, are those in fact connected to a line that we don't see, and therefore there's nothing in between there because it is a pressurized line, or?
Yes, sir, they are connected to another system. So can you see the green lines on there, Adam? I can get a copy of our overall system map and show you the lines.
I guess.
They're there, they're just invisible, or that
I
layer
guess the
wasn't turned
question
on.
becomes is if there is that little section of pink in various areas, does that mean that there could be expansion from those points based on how well the pump system is rated for? Or does that mean that it just is what it is?
For some of those, like the one down here, I know this one here, there was one up here somewhere. Those, I would say, kind of are what they are. There was a couple of little small treatment plants that served only one particular development, a subdivision, say, and they were taken offline and either pumped to us or connected with us with a gravity connection. So those eliminated old lagoon, probably, I would imagine, probably old lagoon-style treatment plants that serve just those communities. I would say those probably would not be subject or ready for expansion. The rest of the areas up in here, that, what you see right there, that is Millbrook subdivision. And we've got sewer that it comes from Millbrook over to Wells Highway and is pumped down here. So all of this area right in here, there's no sewer currently available in there, and I would imagine that for the most part, that would all have to be run as new pipe. I don't think you'd be able to expand much out of what is existing there already, because those were built also specifically for that community that it serves.
Has the sewage treatment plant that was at the Old Springs facility near Clemson, has that been re-energized to service all that housing that's been put in?
Yes, sir. Back when that was developed as the pier in High Point, I believe that's what you're referencing, the old, was it Clemson,
JP.
West Point
JP.
Stevens Clemson
Yeah.
facility?
EJP.
It was, that facility was repurposed, the treatment plant there was repurposed to serve that community that right around in there. Now, I know off and on over the years, there's been talks, whether it was with a private utility that currently serves down there or us, about the possibility of using that or utilizing that. I don't know that that's gonna be a viable solution or option anytime in the immediate future. I think that from what I've gathered and read, and I don't know every detail on that, but the flow there was downsized substantially. I believe it, when West Point Stevens was there, it was rated as a 3 million gallon per day treatment plant. And I think it's been downsized to less than 1 million gallons a day now. Our board had looked at that years ago before I came on board, and we elected around 2010, 2011 to upgrade a pump station that's located right around this point here, which is Martin Creek. We upgraded Martin Creek and built a 3 million gallon off-site storage facility too, to handle wet weather flow. So that was what we were able to accomplish there. I don't know exactly why the West Point, why that never materialized.
Does your board identify opportunity zones where you say this is an area that if somebody wanted to target and tap in, this would be a great location for that to take place?
I think it's a little more of me acting on behalf of the board, as opposed to the board directly addressing that themselves. Now, you have some of the employees of a city, say Mr. Mulder, this my board chair right now and currently is with the city of Seneca. Him, with his interest in economic development, he'll work with others and try to develop or design some of those type of things and locate some areas where that could be done. But primarily, I probably talk with Ms. Caggiano and probably maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, and just let her know of where I'm hearing, getting phone calls and interest in different areas around the county where there may or may not be sewer capacity and or infrastructure, just so she's aware of the areas where there is interest.
Is there a map that developers could look at? I see these wonderful little colors of splotches, but it doesn't necessarily tell me that, oh, I could tap in here, I could tap in there, or I would need to run through 15 private properties in order to get to a tap-in location. Is there a map that would say this generalized area could tap to this point as long as it's north of this pump station or south of this pump station or whatever?
I don't know that there is a map. That map is typically going to be housed or handled and worked with by somebody with either the county, the city, or us. We don't have it available anywhere on our website or a website in general with that type of information, and it's been somewhat discouraged by the Department of Homeland Security for us to just put out blanket information about where our infrastructure is located. There's a presidential Homeland Security presidential directive that kind of discouraged us from doing that. The county's got the information. If they call, like, say Annie, or do you have access to that, Adam?
I don't.
I know that Lisa does.
Yeah.
So if there's a call about something like that, Lisa, is she in your?
No, so with any of the sewer questions, I'll always defer them to the retailer end of it, because it's not our information really they give out. So, but and OEA, Economic Alliance, they can certainly do it, or Chris, but I always defer it out to the individual providers.
So we're here talking about this because we're saying, okay, workforce housing is a need, and at the moment, I'm assuming then that there is a place that a developer could go and say, if I was gonna do that, here's where I could easily jump in. I can't see that piece of the puzzle is together. Can you all tell me that piece of the puzzle is somewhere based on a phone call?
It is. If they contact me, I typically am going to do what Adam just mentioned. I'm gonna refer them to the retail sewer provider,
And then
the
does the
proper
retail
city.
sewer provider be able to say, yeah, anywhere you can tap in anywhere along this line right here?
Yes, sir. And for the most part, they are gonna tap into a city line, a city-owned line, as opposed to one of ours. If it is one of ours, the few times that's come up, they handle it the same way. We make sure we have the capacity, and then the cities typically will work with the developer, because more times than not, the city is gonna take over whatever sewer infrastructure the developer is gonna put in.
But the cities do have those map locations?
They do, yes, sir.
Okay.
They sure do. Yes, sir.
I'm 253% increase or growth from 2018 to 2019 is staggering. And I'm like Mike, I'm asking the question, let's say the developer comes in there and he gets a roundabout answer from one of these providers. Does he have to put in the sewer line? Do they share it with the provider? And about how much does it cost to put in, say, X? What is it, just a ballpark figure?
I wouldn't even be able to guesstimate at a ballpark figure, because we're not in the business of installing those. So I don't work with the developers to identify what those cost. But the way I would say the default answer of that would be that cost falls back on the developer to do any sewer line installation or main extension to get to serve that. And that is not just a city thing in this county, and it's not just an Oconee County thing. That's pretty much the standard across the state, that cost falls back on the developer.
So the developer goes to the provider, like Mike was saying, and they say, yeah, we've got this line near you, but it's gonna be your responsibility to provide the service from where you wanna develop to this line. We can take your capacity, or you have said that you can handle that capacity. Boy, that could be a heck of an expensive proposition.
Well, and a lot of times that expense is there for the developer, but my question still goes back to, you had these next slides that said, ooh, we get lots of phone calls about this area, we get lots of phone calls about that area, lots of phone calls about this third area. My question is, why are you getting the phone calls? Why is there not something that a developer who wants to do a project under some parameter be able to go somewhere and say, ooh, I could do it here, 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 now is there land available to do that?
In other words,
Why are they trying to say, ooh, here's a piece of land and then can I connect? Rather than, where can I connect, is there land? Am I misunderstanding? To me, that seems like a no-brainer that it should be there.
It should be a central location that you can go to and say, okay, I'm thinking about doing a development here. Okay, you use this provider and you got this, this, and this
Well,
here.
or even, again, in reverse, that chicken or the egg, again, a developer says, ooh, here's a land tract, can I connect to sewer? I make a phone call, no, I can't connect to sewer, do I really want to do this project in this location? Whereas the way expansion is going now, a developer can say, I need to build 230 homes, where can I do it and connect to sewer? It sure would be nice if they could pick up a phone and call and say, what areas can I connect, either above or below a pump station, and then they can go identify land that would then work for the size they needed.
I think that a majority of it seems to me that the realtors that are in the area are somewhat familiar with where sewer is available.
I can tell you that we do developments all around, and I don't know where those are.
Okay.
So not that I'm the only realtor out there, but we've built 30-plus developments in the area, and I couldn't tell you whether I'm ahead of the pump station or behind it.
Yeah, no, majority of that, anything, I know this about, that question's about affordable housing, for workforce housing, but anything, I would just make the assumption that if it's not in Seneca and it's around the lake, it's not gonna be sewer.
Well, and I'm not even discussing around the lake, but between Westminster, Walhalla, and Seneca, there's a ton of land in those areas.
And where?
And where where is the line, where can the line be tapped into? I'm assuming that, I mean, and I don't know sewer. Can a pressurized line can a line be tapped into a pressurized line with a one-way valve?
No, sir.
Okay, so if it's pressurized at some point, you've got to be ahead of the pump station before it gets pressurized.
Yes, sir.
And is there a map that tells me where those locations are?
It's
There is a
secret.
map that exists, but for the most part, that information will have to be provided to you by the city.
Okay.
The map we have here, the information on this map, I can't tell you how old the information is that we have from the city. I don't know if it's current information or not. All I know is we keep up with our lines. If we have a question about sewer, we even go to the cities ourselves.
It sounds like, and thank you very much for coming to this meeting. We have asked for this meeting because we're trying to figure out, is workforce housing something that we, as a planning commission, can involve ourselves in helping somebody take steps forward? Obviously, a developer has to do it. And it sounds like that where we may have opportunity is saying, somebody needs to commission a map. Or a brochure, or something that
Well, but
says.
I think you're missing the greatest point of that map is there are some things that they do not want accessible to the public unless it is a known entity talking to a known entity. They do not want public access to some
And I
of
get
this
that,
key
it doesn't need to be a public
information.
website, but right now, I guess my question is, can a developer call somebody and say, where can I do this project?
It's very
The city,
fragmented
you
right
said the
now.
city can.
But, well, can the city tell me I can do it within this corridor of range?
Yes, sir. They should be
Okay.
able to tell you that, if not within the same day, I would say
No, but
within a couple of days.
they have some kind of map in existence.
Yes, sir, they do.
Okay.
Do all of these systems in Oconee County have significant additional capacity for added load?
It would just depend, if it was during normal dry weather, yes, I would guess that they would. I can't necessarily speak with certainty about their system. During wet weather, it's hit or miss. It just would depend on the area that it would be located in.
Well, that gets me to one of the questions I had. You talked about this, one of the cities particularly was working on a grant, but they all were dealing with inflow,
Yes, ma'am.
things where you're rainwater. So what are examples of projects that you said that one of the cities has gotten a grant to build an inflow control project?
Well,
So what is that?
okay, so I can give you, because since I don't know where that one is with design, I don't know if they're installing new line or relining existing pipes. I could talk about something the city of Seneca did with one of their projects. So I believe the city of Seneca did a combination of open cut, which is they dig and install new pipe, just like it sounds. They open cut the ground, replace the pipe, covered up, just like what you think of. There's also a technology, and it's called a trenchless technology, where they can, from above ground, go through manholes and essentially slip line an old pipe that has leaks, breaks in it, with a fiberglass. It's almost like a sock, and they can cure that pipe using heat or steam in place between manholes, like I say, and it is structural, and it is considered to be a 40-year fix.
But you're not when you're talking about controlling it, you're generally talking about adjusting the pipes so that they don't have an issue no matter how much rain we have.
Yeah,
And the way I'm looking at it is there anything that the county or cities can do to encourage such things that decrease the amount of runoff that you have from large paved areas? Permeable pavers, permeable driveways, permeable concrete, those kinds of things, waterways, et cetera.
I would say encouraging any of those type of things, rain gardens in people's yards, or education efforts to have people do it, or I think Anderson County, they gave away rain barrels, or maybe not gave them away, but sold them at cost several years ago that would help. But, you know, I came here from Greenville, up where Rewa is located. And I would be afraid of what would happen here if what happened there took place without some type of measure. Now, I say from the education standpoint, we've got a better grip now on what it does take to keep those problems from happening. So that's why I say I like following what goes on up there, because I try to use that as a learning tool. But they've had, in my five and a half years up there, I mean, I don't know how many sewer lines we saw wash away just because of upstream runoff. It wasn't a sewer problem, it was just a runoff, stormwater problem. So anything that can be done, of course, to encourage that, or to look at that, I would certainly support.
I believe a period of time ago, we had somebody come in here and start talking to us about stormwater management. And they were talking about when the new census comes out, when you get above a certain population, that certain things were going to have to be done within the county to try to help us out or abate the stormwater runoff. So this thing is right on the horizon, this stormwater, with all these impervious surfaces that we have now with big parking lots, et cetera.
When will we have our data from the census available? April?
Theoretically, April. But-
Because I would not be surprised this time, if people who've moved here fill out their census forms here, I won't be surprised if we don't hit that point with this census.
But it was only the city of Seneca, right?
That's
was
what
gonna
the
hit that
fellow-
point.
That's what the fellow said,
That's what it
Stacy.
said at the
Yeah.
time, yeah, but, well, it's 85,000 people in the county, right? I think. Is it 85,000?
I think an MS4 designation is somewhere around 80,000 people in a specific watershed, but it wouldn't inherently be blanket across. You can look at the map for Pickens County and it's all spotchy, although they have a utility.
Now, Ms. McPhail, what you bring up is a very interesting point, and I can say that Oconee County has some of the greatest mapping people I've ever worked with, talking about Lisa Simmering.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chapman may be able to get some information from her, because I think she's got a layer on her map that shows the impervious surfaces. I think she can turn that on and off and give you a square footage of how much there is in any given area that you want to see. So I asked her for that exact same information back several months ago, if not a year or two ago, and she was able to provide that to me.
Well, I mean, obviously with our topography, we've got a runoff issue that rainfall might not affect in other places, but it certainly is gonna cause a problem here.
Well,
so.
we had a pipeline wash away back just right after Christmas, a day or two after Christmas last year, down on Richland Creek. And I hate to see it start doing that again after all we had to do up in Greenville because we had to start placing riprap and stone and securing the creek banks along the way to keep it from washing out.
Well, there was one that washed, I mean, it was actually just it was connecting a swamp on one side of the road to a swamp on the other side of the road, but, I mean, it was a substantial pipe. It was probably 4 feet in diameter that went under a road. And to see that entire thing wash away and separate and pieces fall off the edges, after one night of rain, I mean, it makes you certainly think about, and that's out in the country, that Hunt Road, I mean, that, what must a city face when you've got, acres and acres and acres of pavement?
Yeah, and for the most part, I go and I take a look and I monitor what I call a 2-year and a 5-year rain event. NOAA, the National Weather Service, has these classifications that say in 5 minutes, if you get this many inches of rain, it's considered to be a 2-year storm, or 5-year, whatever it is. And it'll go all the way up to 60 days. So in my line of work, you learn to begin tracking that information, and you get to pay a lot more attention to weather forecasts. Sewer systems, I'd say for the most part, are built for it to handle a 2-year storm, not necessarily much more than that. Because of expense, you start moving it out, you wanna handle a 5-year storm, that may cost you 3 times, 5 times the amount of money that it would be to construct something that would be able to handle a 2-year storm. DHEC will never commit to a number that you have to build to. DHEC and the EPA want to see no overflows. That's essentially what their standard is, but they won't say it has to be built to a 5-year rain event. But usually when we have something like that, just like the rain we had in February, when we had a substantial number of overflows at that time, and we consider those, and the state has a law that actually addresses what we call acts of God. So we do not have to necessarily build to accommodate an act of God rain event or storm event. I don't know that you want to say we get a free pass on those, but
Well, but you also have to consider that the more development you have, it takes less rainfall to become an act of God.
that's correct.
Because you've got more runoff.
Well, and it
So-
gets harder to justify,
Right, at
because
that
right
point.
now, when I may say a 5-year rain event's an act of God, it may be, just like you say, a 2-year rain event in the future. I don't know that DHEC's gonna consider that to be an act of God if we're having that much surface runoff getting into lines that's causing us to have overflows. So you do bring up a good point. I mean, that's a great observation, a great thought.
And I'm assuming since you said 80,000, we've got an 80,000 population roughly, or there's 80,000 people, and you provide service to 20,000, so that means there's 60,000 septic systems in the county roughly.
That number's hard to say. I would say, what is it, about 2.5,
Population.
2.4 people per household
Right.
here?
So, I mean, it's tens of thousands for sure, and who knows how many are just out there. But if we have, say 80,000 people, so, 30,000 septic tanks could be. I mean, that's the-
I've got one.
Yep, let's go 1, 2,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I don't know that DHEC has a number, a total number of all the ones that are out there. I requested recently the number of permits that DHEC has issued, number of septic tank new installation permits they've issued over the last couple of years, several months ago. And, there's several hundred, if not several thousand, they issue per year.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh, sure.
No other
Thank you
questions?
very much.
We certainly appreciate the information and would appreciate a card.
Yes.
And, Mr. Chapman, is there anything else that we need to
and
do?
if there's anything from, kind of circling back to the attainable housing side of it, and looking at, identification of property, obviously was key for a couple of people here, but to your knowledge, and this is more of the retail side of it. So for the building permits for Oconee County, if you're a not-for-profit, or you're gonna build affordable, not-for-profit, like, you have to have humanity, they don't pay for their building permit fees, right? Or they get a discount on it. Is there something similar to that if someone wanted to tap in to the system, if they were gonna build affordable housing or some kind of market or below market rate housing discount for a tap fee?
For us, there would not be. That would be a city question, as the retail provider. What customers, they only have to deal with us one time. Most of them do, and that is when they are seeking their building permit. We've got to sign off on any building permit that's issued throughout the county, no matter where they connect to us. And that's it. So the questions about what you say would definitely have to go through each of the cities. We don't have the option or luxury of being able to waive that.
You don't
or
charge a fee,
modify it.
right? So,
If they tap directly into us,
right, but I
we
mean,
do.
if they're tapping through the city, you don't charge a fee, so you can't.
Now,
get
we
a
do
discount.
charge an impact fee,
You do
which
charge an
goes into a restricted fund that we use to pay for upgrades associated with growth-related projects. And that growth could be anything from a single-family house to an
Just a
addition or a brand-new industry that comes in. They all pay, and it's based on the number of gallons that they are anticipated to use.
So y'all can install a line You just don't normally?
We can, we don't, because for us, like I say, that we don't
As a
we don't
wholesaler,
charge
it's not
users.
price
We
effective.
we have three customers, and those customers are each of the cities. So when we bill a customer, we send them a bill directly to the city, and it's for a fixed amount for 12 months a year, and then it's adjusted at the end of for the next fiscal year. So how many here are on sewer somewhere? So as you notice, there's no line item on your water or sewer bill for OGRSA sewer, and that's why that is the cities charge you directly, and then we have a fee that we charge them every month, and it doesn't matter if there's one customer using sewer or 10,000 customers. That fee's based on what our approved operating budget is for that year.
Can I ask one other question about the spillages and issues, and if the cities are maintaining those, and if there's a long-term issue that they're not addressing, who should then be contacted?
Long-term issue.
We had an issue where it's my grandfather's house. He had passed away, and we had listed his property for sale, and the sewage overflowed before the closing, and the sewer line that ran through the back of his property, and it actually threw out the whole deal. Come to find out, it had been going on for over 10 years, and nobody was really interested in fixing it. So,
Okay, so the utility was aware of it.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what advice to give you, but if the utility's aware of it, I would just recommend to escalate it
Yeah.
up to.
We
the
tried to.
elected
Fortunately,
officials.
the tornado wiped out the house and the sewer line, so it has now been temporarily fixed.
But
a
yeah,
good way to look at it,
that's
isn't it?
interesting. That's not that I want to get anybody, any other utility in trouble. I would start at the lowest point and begin working way up from there till you get somebody's attention.
I think
And it's one thing, too, why I ask is if they knew about it, is, we're not out there every day, and most of our lines are gonna be out of sight, out of mind. They're not out in a roadway, they may be, half a mile or a mile from the nearest house. We had one that we came across maybe 3 weeks ago where we had a line that had broken. It was a very small hole, but we don't know how long it had been going. We just happened to be out there doing maintenance to the right of way
Yeah.
and came across it.
We actually got the comment from from somebody in particular that said, "Oh yeah, that's been going on for 10 years. We can't fix it yet." So it was a long drawn out ordeal. I
Yes,
can
sir.
give you the list of everybody we talked to.
I feel for you. I wish there was something we could do, but I would have to, if you called me about it, I'd have to refer you to contacting them, as we have no authority over it. I will say that DHEC, I mentioned to you that we are currently in enforcement for some issues, but it may be that some of the other utilities, wastewater utilities in the county are as well.
Okay.
To have issues addressed too. So they hit us hard back when they did an inspection back in January, and it was based on reportable spills. We had reported them, and I think they said, well, we're gonna inspect you guys, and we're gonna inspect all the other cities up here as well for their pipeline. So we get double inspected. We got inspected for the pipeline, everything outside of the gate of the plant, and then they usually come once a year or so and look at everything inside the plant itself.
Just one last question. Do you have room to expand on the property where your treatment plant is now?
We do.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am, we should. I can't tell you how much,
that's fine.
but we have
Plenty of room.
We have approximately, I'm thinking it's about 120, 140 acres, and we're only using about, I'd say, I don't even know how many, there's 40 of it that is cleared. Well, we're not using all of that 40 acres either.
You use about 25, it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
How often now do your pump stations flood out? 'Cause I know at one time they used to flood
We've had the one we seem to have had the most issue with since I've been here is the one that's on Duck Pond Road, which we call our Flat Rock Pump Station. And ever since they replaced the culverts underneath the road on the way to the rock quarry, when it washed out about a year and a half ago, we haven't had as many issues with it, but I think we've still had one flood, and that was that one back in February.
There's the one over on Wells Highway and 123 that's back behind where the old log cabin.
Yes, sir.
Is that one still flood out, or have y'all fixed the problem over that area?
I'm not aware of any times where that station has become submerged, but I do know, that any sewer system that's gonna be built along creek sides they're gonna not have nonstop battles with dealing with beaver dams.
I remember once that one did flood, we couldn't go down and check it. I usually, when I was younger, I worked that, what is it, where they let the younger people come in and like an apprentice type thing?
Yes, sir.
OJT or whatever it is, but that one flooded, we couldn't check it out. And the guy told me it had flooded a couple different times before, but I knew they were doing work on it in that area too.
Now, several years ago, we replaced some pumps there, but as I said, I'm not familiar with the time where that station has gone underwater, any portion of that station. But we do, with that being that's a regional, we consider that to be a regional pump station. It handles flow from a large area up that way, that station needs to be upgraded or replaced. It's beyond its useful life now.
It was old, it seemed like it was an old one.
Yes, sir.
Way back in the 70s.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, they don't build stations like that any longer.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Eleazar. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information, certainly. It's very useful. And if there's no further, I think unofficially we can adjourn. Is that correct?
Officially, you can.
Officially we can adjourn. If I have a motion?